So let's now talk about DLOCLeAPS support in the reconciliation and consensus phase. On the DLOCLeAPS control panel, the reconciliation and consensus phase is outlined in this area here. Between the data collection activities by your mini-teams and starting to assemble the PowerPoint file for the final findings brief. The crux of DLOCLeAPS support for the reconciliation and consensus phase is provided within the PA worksheets. When you're in the reconciliation and consensus phase and you begin to summarize the team findings in the OU section of the PA worksheets, you'll find that this is done the same way it is in the mini-team workbooks for the BUs and SGs. There's a pull down for fully implemented, largely implemented, partially implemented, not implemented, and not yet implemented, and a block to note a finding statement that addresses the characterization. These rows and columns in the PA worksheets can be adjusted as needed to best show the contents, for example, of a finding statement, or whatever other field you're trying to display to best advantage at the time. Before we enter any OU findings, I want to highlight that the OU characterizations and related OU finding statements drive and automatically update the data in other system outputs that are important to the assembly of customer briefings, including the data in the Summary Findings tab, which are the findings data that will go into the PowerPoint upload file, the data in the Quilt or Performance Summary, and the data in the Goal Satisfaction chart. Without any data in the OU section of the PA worksheets, and specifically without any OU finding statements, you would not be able to create a PowerPoint file for a preliminary findings brief, since a preliminary findings brief would have nothing to say if there were no findings. So at this point, if you click on the button to create a PowerPoint upload file for a preliminary findings brief, DLOCLeAPS will advise you that you cannot copy findings for a preliminary briefing because no OU findings have been noted. Now let's enter some sample OU data in the Project Planning tab. Now you can see that the Summary Findings tab, which is where we collect the findings to be uploaded to the PowerPoint file, have begun to show the findings we've entered in the OU section of the Project Planning PA. Our characterizations are appearing in the Quilt as well. So as we said, the majority of the workbook tasks for reconciliation and consensus are accomplished within the PA tabs. Beyond creation of the upload file for the preliminary findings brief, the only other clickable control panel activities during reconciliation and consensus are the creation of an editable distribution copy of the master workbook for update and its subsequent resync with the master workbook. Now, there may be other reasons to produce an editable distribution copy of the master workbook for update and subsequent resync with the master workbook, but I see it as mostly, if not solely, applicable to appraisal work in another country, where the lead appraiser is assisted by a language translator or interpreter. After the team and lead appraiser achieve consensus, articulating their findings at the OU level, the interpreter can edit the distribution copy to add the translation to the summarized finding statements in the OU, and the lead appraiser can then upload the translations back into the master workbook. This works much the same way as syncing the mini-team workbooks with the master workbook. First, we produce the Excel distribution copy. It's saved in a new subdirectory to the master workbooks directory called master workbook copy _prelim, with a further subdirectory and file name of appraisal details internal -- customer short name and a date timestamp for the time of creation. It will simultaneously create a repository named response for the return response in the same subdirectory. Click Yes to open and review the distribution copy. The distribution copy is a values-only copy of the PA tabs and the quilt. The PA tabs include the OU frame, all the BUs and SGs, and the associated appraisal discovery data in case they can be of use to the interpreter. So let's say your interpreter has finished updating the OU finding statements in the distribution copy of the workbook, and it looks like this. Here, I've added this sample phrase, all in caps, to represent the added translation, following an Alt-Enter carriage return. And so let's further say that we've received the file back from the interpreter and we've deposited it in our ready-made repository named response. Now we can sync the updated distribution copy with the master workbook using this button here, labeled Import Team OU Input into Master Workbook. We select the file to import the same way we selected the mini-team inputs. Only the OU finding statement will be updated in the master workbook. So now the interpreter's work has been synced in the master workbook. So now, before we move on to discussing uploading the PowerPoint file, let's just finish updating the OU frame, in this case with goal satisfaction, which is once again a pull down for whether it's satisfied or unsatisfied. You can see that the goal satisfaction chart, which you can also pull into your PowerPoint presentation by copying and pasting, is being automatically updated by this activity. We'll discuss approaches to assembly of the PowerPoint presentations in a separate training module, including copying and pasting chart views from the workbook. The Summary Findings tab, labeled Some Findings, provides a preview of the findings as they will appear in the final findings presentation. The Summary Findings tab lists all the process areas that have been identified in the Sequencer tab as germane or in scope to the appraisal in the order defined in the Sequencer tab. In this respect, it's geared to the final findings format since the preliminary findings presentation will only list PAs that have findings. In addition, the preliminary findings presentation will not characterize the extent to which the practice has or has not been implemented. When no PAs have been identified in the Sequencer tab, the Summary Findings tab will be blank, except for the heading. The findings listed in the Summary Findings tab are the findings as formulated or articulated in the OU section of the applicable PA tab. When there are no findings in a PA, DLOCLeApS will automatically enter the phrase None Noted under Weaknesses. These sequence item numbers here on the left are provided to help the team identify and locate items for discussion. It's worthwhile reviewing the Summary Findings tab and making any needed changes before you create the PPT upload file, the upload file for the PowerPoint presentation. However, it's really so easy to pull the data into a draft PowerPoint file that it may be more advantageous to create a draft copy of the findings for review in the more familiar container of a PowerPoint presentation, as we'll see in a moment. The findings displayed in the Summary Findings tab are read-only, so you can't and shouldn't make corrections or updates here. If you identify a needed change, you should make the change in the OU section of the applicable PA tab. If you do find a needed change after you have uploaded the outline to the PowerPoint presentation, you should consider making the change in the OU section of the applicable PA tab in the workbook, creating a new PPT upload file, and re-uploading the file to the PowerPoint presentation to maintain consistency and traceability between the source and the output. Nevertheless, you can, of course, just go ahead and make the change in the PowerPoint presentation alone. But then seriously consider making sure to mirror it in the workbook. As discussed, we'll talk about approaches to assembly of the PowerPoint presentations in a separate training module. A final note about the Summary Findings tab. Although there are periods at the end of the process area title and the purpose description, these periods will not appear in the PowerPoint upload. These periods have been added to improve readability in the Summary Findings tab only. So now let's create a PowerPoint upload file for the preliminary findings brief using this button labeled Create PPT Upload File for Preliminary Findings Brief. And now let's just go and open any old PowerPoint file, in this case a brand new one. And then from the Home tab, we select New Slide, Slides from Outline, and your PowerPoint upload file, which will always be in this location, which DLOCLeApS has established in the DLOCLeApS directory. So we'll select this file, and that automatically brings everything into the PowerPoint presentation. The title of the slide, such as Project Planning, and the weaknesses that were found. And you'll note here, as we discuss, that the statements of weakness do not include any characterization to indicate the extent to which the practices are therefore less than fully implemented. Nor does it contain any PAs without findings. I find that to resolve this problem where the slide content doesn't fit the PowerPoint presentation nicely, you can just go and select the tab for Outline View over here, and from then on it'll bring itself into shape. Or you can do it by cycling through the slides and clicking inside the text shape where necessary. I've left the discussion of tracking consensus status till the end here, since I am aware of several approaches to the process of wrapping up consensus. You will best decide at what point to apply this feature of the DLOCLeAPS appraisal workbook, if you apply it at all. As you complete consensus for a PA, you can keep track of where you are by ticking off this checkbox up here in row 2, labeled Full Consensus Achieved, OU Characterization for PA. Then, if you pause and pick up consensus later, you can easily see where you left off. You'll note that the action is turning the OU frame header green and the tabs green. It's mostly by the tabs color that you'll be able to easily see where you were, even if it's out of sequence.